Welcome to the S.O.A.P video series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. We are working our way through the book of Joshua, and it's been pretty exciting so far.
Oh, definitely. A lot of action.
A lot of action, and we're sort of going through it fast. Maybe like a chapter a day in some places, not always. But we're at the point where we're going to start leaving some things out. We're going to start skipping around over the next couple of weeks. We're not hitting every verse.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like we're hiding anything. It's that
it cannot read these; they're forbidden.
It doesn't move the story forward.
Yeah.
Right. So feel free to read it, but feel free not to read it.
Well, and in some of these chapters that we're going to skip, there are like interesting tidbits,
definitely.
but
right.
Do you read the whole chapter of names and places to get to the interesting tidbit? Yes, you should. We're just not doing it in this series.
Yeah.
Right.
So last week was kind of cool because we read 3 chapters and there was like a big thing in each chapter.
Yeah.
Which was, I don't know why that's cool, but it is kind of cool.
Because it doesn't always work out.
Yeah. Right. So we saw last week Israel defeats Jericho. Then Israel moves on to the next place, and it's that AI place. Yeah. And what'd you call it? AI? Just I? Instead of the A?
Yeah.
And what we found is Israel gets beat by them, even though they're much smaller. And it goes into why, and there was a man that had sinned.
Yep.
So that gets resolved. They fight him again and easily defeat him, and they reconcile with God.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a cool thing. And this week we'll see, I think one of the funniest parts. Well, people had a choice, right? You could leave, you could fight, and these guys made a different choice.
Yeah.
And so we'll get into that a little bit, and then we'll see that the nations that were in the promised land started getting smarter. They knew they couldn't defeat Israel one-on-one, so they start banding together to create bigger armies. And we'll see really in 2 chapters how there's a southern campaign and a northern campaign, and that's really all the fighting.
Yeah.
The initial fighting.
And it seems like it's pretty small. Of course, it takes time. But by the time we get through chapter 12, 13, we're about halfway through the book. And then it starts dividing out the land over the next little bit.
But this week is the southern campaign and the northern campaign, which is the main part of the fighting.
This really takes the rest of the main narrative of conquering the land.
Yeah, so if you're tired of the conquering of the land part,
it's gonna be quick.
Yeah. It's over after this week, and then other problems come up. Yeah. So let's get into it. So chapter 9, there's people called Gibeonites, and there's a whole bunch of ites, right?
Yeah.
So these are Gibeonites, and like I said, we saw some people that decided to leave. We see people that decided to stay and fight. We see people like in Jericho who decided to hole up.
Yeah.
And these guys decided to, hey, let's take all of our stuff that's new and we'll put it over here. Let's get all the old stuff out, like really old stuff. Now let's go before Israel, act like we're from someplace far away, and say, make a treaty with us.
Yeah. So there's some deception going on.
Outright lies.
Yeah, this is actually a subgroup because there's one of the let's say one of those ites that you're talking about. There's the Perizzites and the Hittites. These are the Hivites, and they were in multiple cities, and Gibeon was one of the cities. So it's almost like they didn't even talk to their other relatives or their other people. It's just like one city, which turns out to be a big city. So maybe it's the one that oversees the whole little tribal area. They come and pretend like they're from a long way away. Oh, we don't want you to destroy us. We've heard all this bad stuff. So would you please make a treaty with us?
Yeah. Which, and then it says that they examined them, right, and saw the animals looked like they'd been, ridden hard, and the saddles were very worn, and the water skins were very used. So they had every reason to believe
the bread was dried out, their clothes were torn, the whole thing.
Yeah, so it's a whole story, but to me, one of the keys is all the way down in verse 14b, when they're talking about the nation of Israel. It says they failed to ask the Lord's advice.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And so they were deceived. They didn't go to God. They didn't go to God to ask.
Yeah.
So then it's a question. So Joshua ends up making a peace treaty with them, and he also swears an oath.
Yeah.
And bad things are going to happen to Israel if Israel doesn't uphold it. Now the next sentence, they find out that they've been deceived.
Yep.
So there's somehow they found out that there's been the deception, and the nation of Israel has a choice. Do we destroy these guys, or do we uphold the oath that I just took, that just took as a nation? They decided to keep it.
Yeah.
And really, these guys, they weren't slaves, but they were the woodcutters. They were going to get the water.
Yep.
They were the people that took care of the altar that was built last chapter, in chapter 8.
Yeah, they basically
Manual labor
served as
people.
manual labor.
Yep, exactly.
In Israel in exchange for their lives.
Right.
Now, verse 24, I think, is also a key, because these people from Gibeon were like, it was carefully reported to us, your subjects, how the Lord your God commanded Moses to assign you the whole land and destroy everyone who lives in it. Well, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. Now, first of all, they knew. Right? I mean, the fact that they know Moses, they know, so they know that Israel is supposed to come in and take over the land.
Right.
But this whole, you've got to destroy everybody in the land. See, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. And so they were working off of bad information. Israel was working off of bad information. Nobody bothered to say
check in
what's true, which is a good principle for us today.
Right.
We start running ahead of God sometimes. And
obviously we're going to go down this path.
We got to be careful with that.
Right.
And so they became manual laborers. Israel upheld their end of the bargain, and the writer who was editing all this together at the end, we had talked about this, when it says to this day, is that today in 2022? No, but when it was written or edited or compiled later.
Right. So then in chapter 10, a collation of 5 kings band together, and they don't attack Israel. They attack the Gibeonites, which is kind of an interesting twist. And again, Israel has a choice. They could, they just made an oath with this group that they would protect them.
Yep.
And now they've been deceived. So what do? They quickly decided that they would uphold their end of the bargain.
Yeah.
In fact, so quick that they seemed to have catch the 5 kings kind of sleeping at the door.
Yeah.
And easily defeated them.
Yep.
It doesn't hurt that God said, the army won't resist you.
Right. Well, and they attacked them overnight, and then God came in with this huge miracle of these giant hailstones. And I love the verse that says that there more of them died from the hailstones than the Israelites killed.
So God doing his part.
Which God had told them all the way back in Numbers and Deuteronomy, I will fight for you. You don't have to worry about whether you're going to win or not. I'm going to take care of this.
Yeah.
So he did.
Yeah, so there's an interesting piece here. It talks about the sun standing still. What's going on?
I take that literally.
Yeah.
I think that, this is another miracle, right? We just had this huge miracle with the hailstones, and Joshua, cries out. He says, don't let the sun go down before we finish this. We don't want to do this in moonlight. We don't, they're going to get away under dark. And God somehow supernaturally pauses. Now, first of all, we know that the Earth moves around the sun, and the moon moves around the Earth, and all that. And so some people come to this passages like this and say, the Bible doesn't know anything about science. The Bible's not true. Whatever. But these are the same people that read in the newspaper sunrise at this time and sunset at this time, and they don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
It's just part of the language. When you look in the sky, it looks like the sun moves. So, but there was a miracle. I don't know how it works. Right. Knowing what we know.
That's why we call it a miracle.
Yeah. Knowing what we know now, did God put the entire universe on hold for just a minute? Except for, did
he speed up? Did he slow down? Did he...
All the laws of nature that God put into effect, how does all that... I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know. But I take that it did actually happen literally, that there's an extension of that day for some time, don't know how many hours, don't know how many whatever, and then it started back up again.
Right. Right. So cool. So Joshua and Israel defeat these kings, and they don't stop there. They go on something called the Southern Campaign.
Yep.
And if you think about Israel, map
Yeah.
on Israel, and you would think if you're going to attack this land that I'll call it the Promised Land,
Yeah.
because it's not quite Israel yet.
Yeah.
You think you would attack either starting in the south or the north.
Yeah.
They almost came in the direct middle, and they attacked Jericho. So now they're kind of which way to go. But
Yeah, they've got
they
it
decided
split.
to go south.
Well, that's because that's who attacked first.
Yeah.
Right.
And certainly God's on their side too, but they do a southern campaign,
Yeah.
and they don't go into every city. They're not
Right.
wiping everybody out, but there
Right.
are key places that they're going to, and it's in one campaign.
Yeah.
They wipe out the
southern
southern
half.
part
Yeah.
of what's going to become Israel.
Now, what's interesting is that had they not, back in Numbers 13 and 14, when the spies went in, originally, had they not all
freaked out.
and said, we can't do this, they were at Kadesh Barnea, which was on the southern tip. They
which
would
is
have gone
kinda
in
where
from the
you would-
south and moved north, exactly like you would expect.
Right.
But because of their wandering, then God brought them in on the west side, crossed the Jordan River instead of the south side, and
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you're right. That's exactly what they should have done.
Yeah. So they did that, and then they went back to where what their headquarters were, where their wives and children were.
Yep.
They weren't done, but they kind of it was
circled
kind of
back.
natural for them to circle back.
Yep.
So now it's the northern campaign side, and the northern kings certainly would have gotten words that the southern kings were being wiped out, and especially systematically, they seem to have all band together at that point. And now we have a serious army, and with chariots, and I think they even said banded wheels, right? So in our world, that'd be the modern day tank of the day type of deal. So a substantial force.
Yeah.
And
Well, and Israel was just infantry. Right. So so you've got infantry versus
Yes.
iron and spears and chariots and all
Right.
this stuff that you can't win. You can't win.
Yep. And God says, don't worry.
Yep.
They're all going to be dead by tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, and remember, it's war when you're reading this. It's brutal. We've talked about this in the past. God has given them, 40 years. The people in the land knew they were coming.
Yeah.
Some people moved, some didn't. Not every city was destroyed, but certainly select ones were, and there was definitely brutality.
Well, and I think part of it was even all of the ones that even all of the cities that ended up being destroyed. I don't know that they necessarily had to, except that they attacked. So this is now a self-defense thing. I mean, this is you have chosen to quote from Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade. You have chosen poorly. You could have been on the right side of this. You chose poorly. You've attacked. And let's not forget that in this culture, war was never about soldier and soldier or even king and king. It was about gods.
Right. Yeah. Our God, your God.
Right. Our gods are stronger than your gods. And by the way, we've got tons of them because we've banded together.
Yeah.
And you've only got one. And yeah, he did the Red Sea thing. And yeah, he did Jericho. But that was just one city and one God. This wasn't all of the gods of the northern Canaan.
Yeah.
So when they stood up against God, God said, no, you don't.
Yep. We see at the end of chapter 11, it says the land was free from war, which is a cool statement there.
Yeah.
Chapter 12, we're not reading. We're skipping it. So, like you said earlier, make sure to check out what you're reading because we are moving around a little bit.
Yep.
So then in chapter 13, it says the Lord speaks to Joshua, and it seems like some time has passed.
Yeah.
So the big question is how much time has passed?
Yeah, I don't think we really know because we don't know. I don't think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think we ever get an age for Joshua until the end. He dies at 110 years old. But how old was he when he joined as Moses associate, and moving along. I don't think we have.
So it does say, I think Caleb was 85.
Yeah.
And Caleb and Joshua were the two spies that had gone in. Doesn't mean that they were the exact same age
Right.
of each other.
Right. So this was about 45 years later. So we can say
Yeah.
Caleb was about 40 when they went in as spies. So
Right.
now you got your wandering years. Now you got your
right.
Yeah. So I would imagine that, Joshua was very old. He's probably in his 60s, 70s, 80s at this point. It doesn't say that it had a long time had passed to make him old. It's been 45 years. No matter what he was, he's going to be considered,
Right.
So
here's the thing. We had said, they're in the desert for 40 years. They probably spent 5 to 7 years.
And the reason we get 5 to 7 is because their desert time was 40 total. I think that includes 3 to 6 months or up to a year of leaving Egypt to get to Sinai, another year at Sinai. So I think that's about 2 out of the 40. So they really wandered around for 38. So, but if you don't include those, then it's probably 5. If you do include those, it's or if you don't include those, it's 7. If you do, it's 5. It's just basically there's been about 45 years from the time they left Egypt.
Okay. So what we find is there's 12 tribes, and 2.5 of the tribes have already received their land.
On the east side of the Jordan
Yeah,
River.
right. So on the opposite side of the Jordan River where they're at, and if you remember, that's back to the time of Moses when they were walking around the desert, and 2.5 tribes said, "Hey, we just want to stay here."
Right.
And I was like, "You're crazy. Why would God go for that?" And Moses said, "That's fine."
Right.
That seems to have defined areas under Moses.
Yeah.
Now we're on the west side, where nobody has been before.
Right.
They've conquered the land. Now they have to decide between the 9.5 tribes that are left, who gets what.
Right.
Right. And Moses left some rules, which was drawing lots, but they got to figure out how to divide it and what's fair.
Yeah. So Levi is not going to get anything.
Yep.
Because the Levites are serving as the not all Levites are priests, but all priests are Levites. But what the non-priestly Levites are going to do is live amongst the rest of the tribes to serve as arbitrators of the law, to serve as religious guides when official priest duties aren't needed. So they're still going to represent, still going to stand between God and the people.
Right.
So now we're down to 8.5 tribes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, half of that is Manasseh. And so now we're down to 8. And Judah is going to get a lot of the southern area. Now we're down to 7. That's what has to be determined.
Right. Right. And I think we end this week's readings about there.
Yeah. Yeah. Just trying to figure out, okay.
Yeah. Who's doing what?
Who's doing what around here.
And they haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
So next week we get into how do they determine it, what happens.
Yeah. They start figuring out some of the stuff in here, but not all of it yet. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but the key points. Land is conquered.
Yep.
Now they're dividing it.
Yep. Yep. And God is with them the whole time, giving them instruction. Joshua learned his lesson from Gibeon. Okay, maybe I should talk to God about these things.
Yeah, well, and I even said, okay, now they have the land. This is the land that God promised them back at Abraham's time.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even though it's not all the promised land.
Right. It's not all of it,
It's
but it's
significant.
It's a start.
Yeah.
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 And there's still a lot of people in there that need to be evacuated.
Right.
And so that's going to play a big role in what's coming up as well.
Yeah, in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're right here. It's sort of not quite a cliffhanger, but right here at the, okay, we're finally starting to see some progress. We're finally starting to see they need to get settled in. What's going to happen as they try to get settled in.
Yeah, good.
So
yeah, great place to stop.
That's where we'll pick up next time. Hopefully you find the reading enjoyable. There are parts of it that are just like, okay, these look like just names and places. That's okay. We are skipping through some of those, but some of them are pretty interesting, or at least important. Let's not forget, if it's in the Bible, it's important for some reason, right? These things were written for our example, for our instruction, even if it's not like we're supposed to go conquer people. We should still learn from the history and the examples for us. So pass this along. Share it with your friends and family. Ask any questions. We love to have questions. And we'll see you back here next time as we keep pushing our way through Joshua.